Welcome, everybody, to the Entrepreneur Period podcast, where we talk everything entrepreneurship, from the ups to the downs, the lefts and the rights, whether you're already an entrepreneur, thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, or you just want to hear the stories. Hopefully we can bring you value and improve your journey. I'm your host, CJ the Smart Guy, and before you listen, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media platform at CJ the Smart Guy. Welcome, everybody, to the Entrepreneur Period podcast. I'm your host, CJ the Smart Guy, and this episode is entitled, Why I Voted for Kanye. We'll be breaking down the reasons why I voted Kanye West for President of the United States, so let's get right to it. First, I would like you guys to know I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I consider myself a free thinker. I definitely voted for Obama 2008 and 2012. That's my guy. The last election, when it came down to voting, I was really sick because I didn't want to vote for Hillary or Trump. It was a very gut-wrenching feeling. And when I got to the polls, they actually turned me away because I wasn't registered completely in that area. And so I didn't vote. I tried to vote. I did show up, but I was turned away. You know, Texas voter suppression can somewhat be real, especially in Harris County. And so when I heard Kanye say, you know, I didn't vote, but if I did, I would have voted for Trump, it definitely resonated with me a little bit. Like, well, you know, if I had voted, who would have I voted for? Would I have voted for Hillary, who called us super predators, you know, before Bill Clinton, you know, passed the crime bill? We'll get to that a little later. Or do I vote for Trump, who is very, very adamantly, you know, talking bad about Muslims? He's very, very talking bad about Mexicans. And, you know, in one of his speeches, he talks about, oh, I see my African over there sitting there behaving. And, you know, I don't like all those racial connotations. Whether he's racist or not isn't the point. The point is you're using racism as a way to market yourself to obtain power. Therefore, you're giving power to the racists. That is the biggest concern. It's not whether he's racist or not, because I've seen him hang out with black people. He has black friends. He definitely has been with black people for many years, whether he was on Oprah, whether he was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you know, whether he's at football or at a boxing matches. Like he's been there. It's not like he's like, I hate black people, I want to stay away. But he definitely is an opportunist. And if in a racist country, he's an opportunist, he'll use racism to obtain power. So it's still an issue. But when we look at what happened with the Democrats, especially in 2016, you know, you had the DNC chair. Her name was Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And essentially she favored Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. And the thing is Bernie Sanders has been pro people since day one. So when I let you listen to this video, actually, no, I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys listen to right now. This is the Senate floor of the crime bill when it was passing between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. And then we'll get right back into it.
You must take back the streets. And you take back the streets by more cops, more prisons. I hope this crime bill, when it passes, the Biden-Hatch crime bill, as it becomes law, God willing, I hope that we will have ended once and for all this notion that somehow Democrats are weak on crime. The consensus is A, we must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. We all agree on that. Now, we can find some fringe folks and left-wingers in my party who say, no, that's not what we should do. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without any conscience developing, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond beyond the pale. I don't care why someone is a malefactor in society. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change the behavior, but they are in jail.
And so that was Joe Biden. Like he said, it's the Biden-Hatch crime bill because he wrote it. And essentially what he's saying is it doesn't matter if Ronald Reagan gave these kids drugs and they're cracked out and they don't have parents because their parents are cracked out. It doesn't matter that they're going through mental diseases. You know, give you a little background. In the 70s, Ronald Reagan was the governor of California, and he outsourced a lot of the jobs out of LA, out of California in general. And so when all the jobs leave California, a lot of these factories, and then when he becomes president, he puts the drugs into California and all around the country. You know, this is the reason why there was lots of violence and drugs, is because you took away the jobs and then you bring in drugs. Now, the drugs were used to fund a war. If you guys want to look at, you know, the Iran, you know, Contra scandal, you know, that helped Ronald Reagan get elected. You guys can look that up. I'm not going to get too much into that, but that's what you would want to look at and see, oh, wow, how does a president both say, you know, create the slogan, just say no to drugs, or dare to say no with Nancy Reagan, but at the same time put the drugs into the communities. And so that's in the 80s. You know, Reagan was president from 81 to 89. And so this is the crime bill in 1994. This is a lot of the consequences. That's why the 90s, you know, there was lots of drugs, lots of violence. So I understand what he's saying in the sense that the streets are bad. But when you are saying we need more prisons, more cops, and you're fear-mongering people, talking about they're going to rape and accost your sisters and beat up, you know, your grandfathers and all these crazy things, you know, it's fear-mongering. And the thing is, he says in 15 years, those will become the predators. Understand, in 1994, I'm 4 years old. So in 15 years, I'm 19. So he's really talking about my generation of people. You get what I'm saying? Like, he's talking about the 4-year-olds, because if you're already 20 years old, in 15 years, you know, 15 years, you're not going to be the predator. He's talking about 4-year-olds. He's talking about us. He's talking about young Black Americans. Why? Because he says beyond the pale. So if you're beyond the pale, what exactly does that mean? Pale, I'm assuming, means a white person. And when you say beyond the pale, that means they have color. So he's already been known as saying he's a segregationist. He and Strom Thurmond is a firm segregationist. And, you know, him and Biden, we were friends. He went to his funeral, and, you know, they wrote the first crime bill together before 94, you know, the one during Reagan. So it's like, man, this is a smart, educated racist who has been promoting racism and segregation, you know, since the Reagan era. You know, he's been in the office for 47 years as a public servant, and he's never really done anything for Black people in specific except for create more jails, create more prisons. Now, we can fast forward to when he's vice president for Obama, and you can say he's changed. Well, to some people, you can say he's changed. I tend to not believe it. So now let's listen to Bernie Sanders.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this so-called crime prevention bill. Mr. Speaker, let us be honest. This is not a crime prevention bill. This is a punishment bill, a retribution bill, a vengeance bill. All over the industrialized world now, countries are saying, let us put an end to state murder, let us stop capital punishment. But here what we're talking about is more and more capital punishment. What we're discussing now is an issue where some of our friends are saying we're not getting tough enough on the criminals. But my friends, we have the highest percentage of people in America in jail per capita of any industrialized nation on earth. We've beaten South Africa. We've beaten the Soviet Union. What do we have to do? Put half the country behind bars? Mr. Speaker, instead of talking about punishment and vengeance, let us have the courage to talk about the real issue. How do we get to the root causes of crime? How do we stop crime? And Mr. Speaker, I've got a problem. I've got a problem with a president and a Congress which allows 5 million children to go hungry, 2 million people to sleep out on the streets, cities to become breeding grounds for drugs and violence. And they say, we're getting tough on crime. If you want to get tough on crime, let's deal with the causes of crime. Let's demand that every man, woman, and child in this country have a decent opportunity and a decent standard of living. Let's not keep putting poor people into jail and disproportionately punishing blacks.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
So you see, there was obviously a real issue going on in the 90s in terms of crime and punishment and, death penalties and all these types of things. It was definitely a more difficult time than 2020 in terms of how things were being handled. But understand that Bernie was not trying to lock everybody up. He understood the problem. He understood the root causes was opportunity. He was saying, give them opportunities. Why? Because at least in California, the jobs went outsourced out of California. All the industrial jobs left. And then you bring in drugs. The government brings in the drugs. And so now you're trying to punish the people that you have already hurt. You took away their job and you brought in their drugs, and now you're trying to lock them up. And so when I think about how, in 2016, when Debbie Wasserman Schultz intentionally favored Hillary Clinton over Sanders, it's like, well, you don't even really want equality. You don't even really want fairness. Your whole platform of as a Democrat, you're told, oh wow, this is where as a minority you can succeed, but then you block out the candidate who is pro minorities. And you even hear Biden say, in that speech at a later time, normally, I don't work with Republicans, but on this one I have, and you guys all agree. And that's how he was able to get everything passed, was because he wrote it for punishment and the Republicans liked it. So I don't have any allegiance to the Democratic Party. And when Debbie Wasserman Schultz deliberately favors Hillary, that's not the people speaking. So you have president who's running with racial connotations versus a potential president who has already called us, young black people, super predators and contributed to the crime bill. So either way, both agendas are really bad. I don't like either one. So I didn't vote. Kanye says, if I would have voted, I would have voted Trump. I tried to vote. I don't know who I would have voted for yet. I didn't feel good about it, but that sparked something huge in me. So flash forward to 2020. We have all these different Democratic candidates. You got Booker, you've got Elizabeth Warren, you've got, of course, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, you have Andrew Yang, who's probably one of my favorite ones. You still have Bernie Sanders. And somehow out of all of the candidates, they choose A, the oldest one of all of them, and then B, the one who's the most racist. It's like, I feel like they deliberately put Hillary and Biden out there, as racist, just to make us feel uncomfortable. And when he says things like, if you don't vote for me and you're not black, it's like, you can't take my black card away, sir. Like, you're white, you're 77, 78, you'd be the oldest president in history. And you're saying, I am not black if I don't vote for you. And it's a very concerning thing that a segregationist, somebody who wrote the crime bill to lock us up, says something like that. There's lots of people who say, well, he was just trying to win cool points. There's other people who say, oh, well, he's changed after Obama. But has he really? If you say something like when he said, the black community, unlike the Latino community, they're monolithic, like basically saying we all think alike. And I understand the context. I watched the interview. He literally thinks that we all think alike. And, he's that far out of touch with reality. I can't vote for that man. And I understand when they say the lesser of two evils, but in my evaluation, I look at all the people I see in politics now, and Trump has made more people participate in politics than ever before. I'm pretty sure after November 3rd, we're going to look at how many people voted, and it's going to be way higher than prior years, just because he's commanded that. And would I vote for Trump if there was no Kanye running for president? Possibly. As an accountant, I've seen my business as well as plenty of other businesses rise. I look at the world and, the coronavirus is probably the hottest topic because I hate to see people dying and how we handled it. But I personally think that was a worldwide issue. And I don't, when Biden says in his debate, he says, I would mandate that everybody wear a mask all the time. And that bothers me also, because then it's like, well, what about freedom? I don't want to be caged in a box. Understand the slaves were given food, they were given housing, they were given these things. I don't want the government providing that stuff for me. I don't want the government saying, oh, you have to wear a mask everywhere you go or we're going to lock you up. Like, to me, that takes away the freedom. On the other side, you have, people dying, lots of people getting sick. I don't really like the choice. And so I don't like either one of these candidates. So when Kanye West is running for president, and when you listen to him on the Joe Rogan interview, the podcast that they did, and you see he's running on godly principles. He's a 43-year-old Black American, self-made billionaire who has been warning us about college. Back in the day when he had really college dropout, he told us, to stop bashing gay people. He changed the culture from shoot 'em up with 50 Cent to love, with Kanye West and Drake. And it's like, well, 43-year-old Black American, the descendant of a Black Panther, self-made billionaire, is running for president. And we are just not going to look at him. And I hope in 2024 he actually wins. In 2020, I don't think he'll actually win. He's been very disorganized with the way he's running. I think it's more just a poll, just a test to see what's going on. But in 2024, I hope he does run. I believe he will. I believe Kim Kardashian is trying to actually become a lawyer. And I think that'd be really cool. If he runs and he's serious, he gets like a Democratic or Republican nomination, he'll definitely have my vote, hands down. I don't even really care who he's running against, unless there's a better candidate. But that just seems like a dream come true, that I'm not even going to, think about two perfectly good candidates that I would want. Because right now we're dealing with two candidates I don't want. And so the other aspect to this, because some people will say, well, a vote for Kanye is a vote for Trump, or they'll say a vote for Kanye is a vote for Biden, depending on, what side of the arena you're on. I look at it as, okay, good. Well, both parties need to understand that if Kanye gets 1 million votes, if he just gets 1 million votes, both parties will have to cave into their extremism, because Biden isn't pro-Black. He's clearly trying to lock people up. And Trump is just an opportunist, but he's an opportunist in the Republican Party, and the Republicans historically have not treated Black people well either. So it's like, well, which one do you choose? I choose Kanye West. So Kanye West for president, already voted for him. And yeah, CJ the smart guy, stay stacking G's, stack sats, and I'm out. Deuce. Thank you for joining me on my Entrepreneur Period podcast journey. Hopefully you can apply some of the things that we discussed in your own journey. My goal is to empower you mentally, spiritually, as well as financially. So in order to support me, to support you, I need you to go onto www.cjthesmartguy.com, as well as follow me on all platforms such as Twitter, Instagram at CJ the Smart Guy. And remember, stay stacking G's and stack sats. Deuce.